It worked. It worked, I think. So it looks like there are a couple of you, 9 of you watching right now. I need to remember to look into the actual camera and not at myself looking into whatever. And so everybody who is here, if you're able to, can you type in the chat box to make sure that it works? Because I want to make sure. And can you hear me? Hello. Okay, great. Can you hear me? I assume you can hear me. If you're typing, you heard me say that. Okay, great. Oh, yay, this is so exciting. Okay, so this is the first live call. We're going to be specifically focusing on questions that relate to the reading assignment from this first week, which is the first 50 pages, which is also the first section of the book, the why. Why do we feel so addicted to food? How did we get into this situation in the first place? And basically, the reason that I chose what I chose to put in the beginning of the book is because those were the things, people have said to me a million times, well, diets don't work. And I was like, I don't believe you. Explain it to me. And those were the different studies and different ways of looking at what dieting does to our bodies that actually shifted it for me, which is why I put those different essays and studies and lessons and concepts into the beginning of the book. Yay, you can hear me. There are 13 of you here. Okay, so this isn't a lecture. I'm not teaching anything new except to answer your questions, which will hopefully teach everything maybe in a slightly new light with a slightly new perspective. But what I'm going to be doing is answering your questions about the beginning of the book. Of course, you can also ask questions about anything that's Fuck a Diet related, but let's try and keep it to the beginning of the book and what those lessons are and how they land on you and what your questions are about them, so we can get to as many people's questions as possible. And always know that we can continue the conversation in the group. We can do follow-ups in the group. You can ask an addendum to the question in the group or ask anything in the group. So this is not our only chance to discuss, but it is our chance for me to use my mouth, which sometimes is better and sometimes is worse. So sometimes I might give you my answer and say, let me think on this more and actually make it make sense by continuing the conversation in the group. But also people have asked, let me actually bring up the actual post where people have asked their questions who are not attending live. We can start with live people's questions. So if you want to go into the chat box and ask whatever question you want to ask, I will start answering those. And if there's ever a lull in those, I will go to the Mighty Networks event comments section where people have asked questions and start answering those. So also, Molly, I don't know if all of you even know about Molly, my dog, who's been recovering from her spay and these leg surgery to take little dangling dew claws off. She's been in a cone it's been 3 weeks, and she's downstairs because she's able to not be in a cone when I'm watching her like a hawk, when I can yell at her for trying to rip off her little scabs. But if I had her here with me, with you, I wouldn't be able to actually have all my attention here. I would have to be split attention. So maybe in a future call, Molly can also be answering questions. All right, I don't see any questions, so I'm going to start. Poor Molly. I know. I was trying so hard to not have her have to be in a cone. I was trying to wrap up her little legs. I was trying to do different things. And she kept just getting past it, ripping off the bandages. And the reason that we're still in the cone is because I was trying to let her not be in the cone. So I've surrendered. Okay. Becca asks, do you think intuitive eating, when people say IE, they're often saying intuitive eating, has Do you think intuitive eating has been turned into the hunger and fullness diet? I think a lot of people turn it into the hunger and fullness diet. I think if you really listen, I had a major anxiety attack essentially right before my book came out because Evelyn Tribole, who co-wrote the book Intuitive Eating, joined Instagram and followed me, and I started following her and listening to what she had to say, and I was like, oh my God, she actually understands. This actually isn't supposed to be a diet. She actually understands health at every size. She didn't write it for people to lose weight. And I started to feel really, really badly because I didn't even think about rereading intuitive eating before I wrote the book, which is a good thing and a bad thing because I wasn't co-opting anything, and I really was able to essentially write why intuitive eating, or what we interpret as intuitive eating, didn't work for me, and therefore why it may not be working for you. So it was a good thing that I actually didn't revisit it, but it also means that I wish that I had been able to say exactly what I'm saying now, like to actually take the time to say that it's not supposed to be a diet, instead of me being like, I turned it into a diet and started being a little bit flippant because I feel bad. But I didn't really say anything bad about intuitive eating. I just sort of like alluded to how people turn it into a diet. Yes, they turn it into a hunger fullness diet, but also there's something now called hunger directed eating that I'm seeing all over Instagram, and I don't know where it stems from, but it's people thinking that they're not dieting because they're following their hunger. It's hunger directed, which is, inherently a good thing, right? But because we live in a society that is so obsessed with weight loss being health and weight loss being the goal, and you're only doing it right if you're losing weight, that is inherently a diet. So beware. Just beware when you see people talking about things and they talk about anything about like, you must follow your hunger all of the time. I mean, that's what you naturally do when it's not a big deal, which is why we're doing all the things that we're doing to try to get to that place where it's just like not a drama, but still humans will eat emotionally. They'll get really full, and the less of a drama it is, the more quickly you'll just get back to the rest of your life and the rest of your day, and you'll probably be less hungry later on or the next morning, or maybe not, because your body actually does speed up when you eat a lot of food to digest it. So we don't need to micromanage what we're eating. That was a very long answer to your question. Okay, Lauren says, what do you think about society's obsession with diets, I'm assuming, but then corporate America makes the worst processed foods together? Do you think we have a diet problem because of the way America makes food? I think we have a diet problem because we're obsessed with thinness. Honestly, I do. And you'll probably notice people who are a little bit further along in like the eat everything journey. So many people come to the Fuck It diet saying, but what about processed foods? When I open a bag of chips or when I open a bag of Doritos, I can't stop eating. And yes, they're highly palatable foods, but so is oil and salt, which isn't processed, So is a piece of cake, which can have, I don't bake, but I'm assuming like just a couple ingredients, maybe 10 or less. Bakers, tell me. Highly palatable foods will make you want to eat them a lot, especially if you're really hungry. So I think blaming that is just another way to demonize food. Now, do I think that foods that are made up of mostly chemicals are ideal for us to be like to be the basis of our diet every day for the rest of our lives? Probably not. But the amazing thing is, and the thing that you will, if you keep doing this, will soon be able to trust and soon be able to see, is that they do lose their power. And we think that they won't because of the experience in the beginning of them being so, like us being so hungry and finally allowing it. So it's like, oh shit, like this now has power over me. And that was my big fear. And now it's, proven to be true. But if you actually go through the process, you will get sick of that food that was created to be highly palatable. So basically, thankfully, what I've learned and what many people in this group are hopefully also seeing for themselves is that these foods that were made to be addictive still don't have power when you have a more normal relationship with food. And they just, I mean, maybe you'll finish a whole bag of chips because you're like, it's so salty and I just want the whole thing. But then you just move on with your life. And it doesn't have the power that it has when you're dieting and on that roller coaster and super hungry and fixated on food. I hope that that's helpful. And anybody who's experienced something that they thought was going to take over their lives, or I know I'm thinking about like, you know, snack food. Like you're talking about these really, really processed foods that are that have MSG and that have, you know, this and that, even though MSG is naturally occurring in other foods that are palatable and delicious and that umami flavor. And again, some people are sensitive to many, many different things, but that doesn't mean that it's inherently this horrible, horrible thing that's ruining everyone's lives. If anybody has experienced a food that they thought was sort of like inherently addictive or created to be addictive and that it lost its power over you, share it. Okay. Lindsay says, hi, Caroline. My question is about feeling resistance to letting go of dieting. My brain is still yelling at me to try counting calories. Oh, shoot. It went one more time. Okay. Well, all of the stuff that we're going to be doing, all of this, the discussion that we're going to be doing, all of the writing prompts that we're going to be doing, especially in the next 2 weeks, which are focused on the physical part, that's all about finally allowing food and all the resistance that comes up. I don't know if you've already read the book, if you're just reading it along with this curriculum, but we're going to be doing a lot of work on resistance and beliefs that get in our way when we want to get away from dieting, but we're sort of like addicted to dieting in its own way. So there's that. So that's what we're going to be doing. And hopefully the experience of this group, chatting with other people, doing the writing prompts, looking at your own limiting beliefs and working through them with the brain dump and the energy work, hopefully that will all be really helpful. The other thing is sometimes when going through this process, we slip up and we go on another diet and we quickly see how, I mean, it happens really fast that we get, like, we go back into food fixation mode. And so it can be weirdly helpful to actually do that. I mean, I don't recommend saying like, I'm going to go on another diet, but if it happens, you will see all of the reasons that you tried to stop dieting in the first place. So you're not going to, you know, a lot of this is, what is it? 1 step forward, 2 steps back, or 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And it's okay to, you know, it's okay to mess up and to think that dieting is going to, I mean, it's okay to mess up and think that dieting is going to save you again and then see that it's not. So I think that going through this process will be really helpful for the resistance, but also just know that if you ever go back to calorie counting, you can always come back to the bucket diet. Okay. Oh, she finished. Okay. You also said, but my diet ability is broken. See, you'll see. Exactly. That's what I'm trying to say. When you try to go back on a diet, you're going to see that the ability is broken. And it's because your body and your mind are like, can't do this. And that's why we need to step out of the cycle altogether. And you're allowed to be freaking out. And that is literally the reason that I created all of the writing prompts and all of the tools, and it's all meant to help you move through the resistance. So you are in the right place. And if you just keep following along, it's going to be helpful. I promise. Oh my goodness. Oh, I didn't know this. Okay. Becca says, do you know about hunger-directed eating programs that are faith-based? I don't know about them, but I've been seeing about them on Instagram and they creep me out. So let's keep talking about it. Okay. Stephanie says, is it inherently bad or restrictive to want to focus on? The problem is I try to read something and then it goes to the bottom. Darn it. Is it inherently bad or restrictive to want to focus on eating non-processed foods? I have a lot of feelings over all the processed food-like substances, to quote Michael Pollan, out there. I'm still eating all the things, whether it's processed or not, but I don't love all the added preservatives and chemicals and things, or the crap in plastic packaging. So this is why, and this is going to be in, I forget whether it's next week or the following week, but the whole section on shitty food, it's really, first of all, if you really crave something, like if you're craving a childhood food, or you're craving McDonald's, or you're craving whatever, it's really helpful to just allow it and then move through the fear that that brings up and see that it's not going to destroy your life. But at the same time, you don't have to, I mean, I don't eat McDonald's. Like I eat pretty snobby food, honestly, at this point. I also eat, out at restaurants, and that's just whatever, like all of the time. But when I like shop for myself, someone would look at my cart and be like, "You're the fuck a diet girl?" And it's like, yeah, because I eat whatever I want. And this is like, it's not a drama. Like, it's just not a drama anymore. So what that means is you don't have to eat anything. But if you're afraid of it, and say you go to a restaurant or you go to someone's house and they offer you something and it's all they're offering you, and you're like afraid of it, and there's like an anxiety process that happens, like that isn't worth it. So the shitty food section that you will either be reading coming up, or you're already read and we'll revisit it in the next 2 weeks, is that to begin to allow yourself to eat things that scare you, especially if you want them, and to see that they can't destroy you. So you don't have to like grocery shop for food that we're all inherently going to have things that we think are healthier and not, no matter what I say, no matter what you learn about calories. I mean, the biggest thing I want is for us to not be afraid of calories, sugar, carbs, getting full. All of that is really, really, really important, and gaining weight. Any judgment over those things is inherently unhelpful to you actually listening to your body. But we're still within that. Whatever we've learned before is inherently going to we all have ideas of what's a little bit healthier and a little bit less healthy. And I think the idea and the best way forward, because I can't just erase your memory, and I can't just like implant, all foods are exactly the same all of the time. Like a Cheeto is exactly the same as like a sweet potato. Like obviously one has more nutritional value, but to be able to eat varied things and to move on with your life and to just listen to your hunger. Does that answer your question? That you don't need to eat anything you don't want, but if there's a lot of stress there, it's worth just moving past, because you want to be able to live your life and not be genuinely afraid of foods you may be eating. Does that make sense? We will definitely continue to talk about this, because a lot of people feel this way, and it's something that I think will continue to come up. Michelle says, how would you, as a patient, approach doctors who are so entrenched in the BMI health standard and who continually shame those with chronic and genetic illnesses who feel shamed and humiliated? Such an important question. In the book, I believe it's the book Health at Every Size, but I will double check. There is a script, and it's like a script for going to the doctor. So I would look at that, and I will double check that and make sure that that's the book that it's in. But also something really, really simple that a lot of people say is, how do you treat thin patients who have this same health problem? And all diseases that are weight related you can get in any body. So thin people get weight related diseases, which is why calling them weight related is kind of misleading. So if you can just say, how do you treat thin people who have the same condition? Hear what they say and say, can we try that? But It's so, I mean, this is so hard. This is one of, and I'm going to say this a lot, this is one of the hardest parts of the pocket diet, but this really is, especially if you need to spend all of this emotional energy advocating for yourself. And one of the things I say in the book is find a weight neutral doctor. And that is so much easier said than done. So I really empathize. And I think that this is something that we can brainstorm about in the group. And it's always going to be significantly harder for people who are afraid to, stand up for themselves, or not as confident using their words, or debating or advocating for themselves. I mean, it's really difficult. So I just want to empathize with you and say that maybe this is something that we can start sharing experiences with, and we can get some ideas for things that are effective and simple things to say to our doctors. But I'll also look up if that script is in Health at Every Size or the book Body Respect. I will get back to you on that. Okay, Christy says, when they're allowed, I don't eat them. Oh dear. It keeps jumping to the bottom, so that's why I have to keep going back up. When they're allowed, I don't eat them in a frenzy and then notice how they actually taste, which isn't as good as we think it is. I think that's Christy responding to something we were talking about, hyperpalatable foods. I would agree there. And that's me having become this food snob who's like, nah, I don't want that. Like and then of course, if I'm super hungry, I'll just eat anything, because things taste way better when you're starving, and that's fine. That's like good. It's fine. Okay, Claudia said, I love chips. I buy them and eat what I want, and then the rest tend to go stale sitting around the cupboard. It really takes the power out just by eating them. Yay, thank you for sharing these things, because it's really, really helpful. If you cannot trust the process, it's so helpful to hear other people say, no, look, I felt the same way, but actually, this has been my experience. Lauren said, well, I think part of it is it doesn't fill us up, and that's why we keep eating them. It does fill you. I mean, it depends on what you need. Like if you're craving protein, or if you're craving tacos, or if you're craving something if you need carbs, or you need protein, or you need fat, and you eat something that isn't that, then it's not going to satisfy that need. But a big, huge bag of chips, well, I actually see what you're saying. Like if you eat a whole thing of Pirate's Booty or a whole thing of Cheetos, it's actually not going to fill you up the way a meal would. But that's okay. Like that's okay. That's fine. You're allowed to eat and not be filled up and keep eating. Does that make sense? That's like a reframe, but it's okay to not be full and need to eat more food. And when we're so afraid of the amount of food that we're eating in a day, that it's like, why would I fill up on non-nutritious food? Or why would I half fill up on non-nutritious food? And it's like, it doesn't need to be a drama. Does that make sense? Nancy said, can you give an overview of what we'll be doing over the next weeks? Well, you can see if you go to the welcome post, you can download the workbook for the entire program. And it also has a syllabus of what the reading assignment for every week will be, an overview of what the writing prompts are, or the tools, if there's a tool in that section of the reading assignment. And the rest of the workbook actually has the full text if you don't feel like looking in your book to find it when you are going through the writing prompts, or if you have the audiobook. But so this first week was the first section of the book, which actually didn't have any writing prompts in it. But I'm going to be posting and prompting us to discuss the writing prompts that are in the reading assignments for the rest of the week. So I'm not sure, Nancy, if maybe you didn't download it and so you haven't seen the syllabus, but every week I'm going to be posting the reading assignment, and then throughout each week, I'm going to be prompting us to discuss all the writing prompts. So that is what we're going to be doing and spending our time doing, you and I. And then you guys can do any discussion you want, and then we'll be having this live call every week. So I don't know if that's helpful to show you what we're actually going to be doing together throughout the next 7 weeks. I can't believe already 1 week is gone. And if Nancy, you don't know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the full PDF, I can help you find that. But also you don't even need the full PDF because every week when I post the assignment and I post that week's, there's like, I have the full PDF of the entire thing, and every week I'm going to post just that week's PDF. So as long as you look at the post that I post each week with the reading assignment, you should be good. Okay. Michelle, I'm thinking, I think. Okay. He said, it's true. I have so many things in the cupboards that used to be binge foods, and now they have no power. Pop-Tarts, Nutella, chips, cookies, cheese, Fruit Loops. And those are all the things that we're like, oh no, they're like specifically created to make us just eat them until we die. And they really just are food, hyper palatable food that doesn't have as much power when we're fed. Pamela says, Oreo cookies specifically mentioned in the Whole30 book about food with no breaks. Right. I've actually never read the Whole30 book, and I've never been on Whole30 because I feel like it might, I'm actually curious to know when it became a thing. I think maybe 2012, which is when I went on the Fuck It diet. So I don't even really, I mean, I know generally what Whole30 is, but I've never read the book. She says, one of the first things I've eaten, and they do have breaks. I stopped eating them when I'd had enough. Ellie says, all humans have diets. It's what food human cultures consume. When you demonize diet, you're referring to a diet that is specifically restricted eating to achieve weight loss, correct? Okay, yes. So we're talking about the cultural meaning, our cultural meaning of what a diet is. And when you say don't go on a diet, I'm not saying don't eat food, obviously. I'm saying trying to intentionally lose weight, whether it's through restricting calories or different macronutrients or having good, bad foods, has been shown to backfire 95 to 98% of the time when you're looking at it long term. And then the book, especially this first part of the book, is explaining why that happens. So yes, that's what I mean when I say diet. Becca says, okay, so we're back to talking about hunger-directed eating. These faith-based programs, and one in particular, bases your salvation on eating from stomach hunger. Yes, it's creepy. Ugh. So gross. I hate it. I hate it so much. It's very much in line with your diet might be a cult. But I went on, I think somebody talked about this in the group, but I read a book when I was in high school called The Way Down Diet. And it's very faith-based and God-based, and like pray while you're eating that God will let you not get full and walk away from the table, like, you know, having not eaten a lot. And that basically, if you can't do that, you're not putting your trust in God. Don't recommend. Lauren said, I love food, and I'm afraid going through the Fuck It diet is going to eliminate my love for food. Food losing its power scares me because I think food will just be so mechanical. Does this happen on the Fuck It diet? A lot of people go through a phase where they're like, I don't know what I want to eat. Like, I feel like and it depends on the person, because some people are very genuinely passionate about food. It's like an art form. I am not. And so I do get to a place like midday when I'm like, oh, I need to eat lunch and I didn't go grocery shopping. And so it's just sort of like, oh, what can I eat to like keep living my life? And then I'll sit down and eat like a really amazing dinner, which is very post Fuck It diet. Before it was like, well, what am I going to eat? Like planning what I was going to eat for like weeks in advance and grocery shopping every 2 days. So I had all of the correct foods and like learning how to cook so I could cook the perfect thing. And thinking I was a foodie, but actually just being obsessed with like farm to table things because it's like acceptable food and like eating little tiny bites of it. But I still really enjoy food. I mean, this is something that we can definitely chat about in the group, because I would love to hear from lots of other people who are at different, phases in the journey. Because I think Michelle, and this is one of the questions that was asked ahead of time, but Michelle was asking a question about this. And it is this weird thing where it's like, it's clearly a shift in the right direction to not be obsessed with food and not to let it rule your life and not to have this like big drama with it. But it almost sounds like a diet to people. It almost sounds like restrictive to like not like food, if you know what I mean. And nobody doesn't like food, but I think, we're wired to love food, especially when we're hungry. And so you may go through weird phases where you're like, oh, all the things that used to sound good don't sound good right now. And like relearning your relationship with food and what you actually enjoy. But like I still, I just have like different way of loving food. And I love going out to dinner, and I love, I love it in a different way. And your fear is very, very, very common, which is why I would like to bring this into the group and to discuss it more and to see where other people are and how other people feel. And because there are some people in here who've been doing this for a while, or who have been doing this for a year and then joined this to like go a little bit further. But I understand your fear, and I promise you will always love food, and food will always be delicious, and you will always be allowed to eat what you love. And if it doesn't have the forbidden power, it's really interesting, because this is like somebody else posted in the group about missing that kind of high of a diet. And then there's like the high of a diet of like, wow, everything's going to be really great now. And then also the high of like going off the diet and eating a forbidden food. And that's a roller coaster of like kind of addiction that we've been on. Like, to me, and for us, I think for most of us, that is the addiction. And so we're getting out of that. And so everything's a little bit less dramatic and forbidden and life-changing. But food will always be delicious. You will always have hunger. You will be able to eat 3 meals a day and more for the rest of your life. And so I promise that food will still have joy, and hopefully eventually it'll have more joy, because it won't bring all the drama. But we can definitely talk about this in the group too, because I'm curious what other people have to say and what other people's experiences have been. Lindsay says, yes, that script to talk to your doctor is in the book Health at Every Size. So I recommend buying the book and using the script. Michelle says, thank you. I just ordered that book, Health at Every Size. It's very difficult in the state of Florida to find a weight neutral MD. It's very difficult everywhere to find a weight neutral MD too. But thank you so much for the book recommendation. Yeah, it's a really good book. Like lots of good books, there are like, people say that the end when they talk about nutrition is a little bit triggering, but they also tell you not to read it if you're not in a place where, not in like a good place with food. So just listen to that and read it if you want, and don't read it if you don't want to. Ellie asks, actually, how is the Fucka diet different from intuitive eating? The goal is the same, intuitive eating, like actually eating that is intuitive. And the way to get there is a little bit different based on the things that they recommend in intuitive eating that most people turn into a diet. For instance, the hunger fullness scale. People turn that into a way to be good or bad. I'm not allowed to eat yet because I'm not XYZ on the hunger fullness scale. Like, I don't think that that's helpful. I think that that makes people micromanage their food and overthink it. And it takes longer to get to a place that's truly intuitive, and or you never do, because you're always sort of in this like, well, I shouldn't be eating a lot. I shouldn't really be getting full, or this, if I'm really hungry, but this is so much food and I shouldn't really eat it, because if I'm eating intuitively, I shouldn't really eat that much. And it's like very quickly gets interpreted in a sort of less is better way. And the words that I use and the way that I choose to describe what we're going for, and also how much food you may need to get there is different from intuitive eating because it just is. And they say, I am friends with a lot of intuitive eating non-diet dietitians, and they totally agree with the fuck it diet. And they're like, yes, this is what intuitive eating is trying to say, but it's saying it in a more clinical and careful way. It allows them to not get blasted for the things that I get blasted for, say, in angry Amazon reviews. People will be like, this is the most irresponsible thing I've ever heard. How can eating a lot of food ever be good? Whereas intuitive eating says it in a sort of like, listen to what you're hungry for. You may be hungry for more one day than another day, but people aren't really comprehending what that's going to look like. And then when it looks different than they expect, like they're really, really hungry for a couple months, they assume that they're doing it wrong and that they're a food addict and that they need to really carefully listen to their hunger so they don't like give into their food addiction and do it. Does that make sense? There's a reason why I explained it the way I did, because I think that there are some of the ways that it's explained in the book, Intuitive Eating, are not giving the full picture, in my experience. So that's how they're different, but the goal is the same. And if you talk to a lot of people who have studied this and do this on a day-to-day basis with clients who are teaching intuitive eating to their clients, they have to guide them through the same things that my book is guiding you through and be like, no, you really are allowed to be really, really hungry. And this is why. And so that's why I wrote the book. Which is also like, there are a lot of non-diet dietitians who are my friends, my Instagram friends, who are saying, I am now prescribing the fuck it diet to my clients because intuitive eating wasn't giving them the full picture. And that was what I was having to take them through. This is them saying, like, they were having to take them through the things that I take you through in the beginning of this book, in this section and in the physical section of how hungry you're allowed to be. And so that's how it's different. And that's why it's different. Also, intuitive eating was written in the 90s. I mean, they apparently were under so much more pressure to make it seem more clinical and more like safe and diet-like. And that's why. Okay. Pamela says, I am getting really full lately. I don't like feeling like a stuffed turkey for hours after I've eaten. Do I really have to have more, or have I reached a turning point? I don't know exactly what you mean by this question. I don't know what you mean by this question. Like, when you're really full, do you have to eat more? Like, of course not, unless for some reason you want to. But you can give me a clarification, because I'm not sure that I understand the question. Okay. Montana said, have you felt any pushback from Big Diet? Well, I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure. It's actually like what you want from a book is for it to, like, hit the New York Times bestseller list and like be all over the place. But what would come with that, I mean, it's actually selling pretty well for what it is, but it's not at that level. And I'm thankful right now, because it means that it's flying under the radar of like Dr. Oz and celebrity diet book writers and all of that, like that level scrutiny. So I haven't, and I weirdly am like, maybe I should just keep going like this. So I don't have to deal with more pushback. It's like, do I want to like sell a shit ton, or do you know what I'm saying? All right. Claire said, in your book, you talk about having helped numerous 1,000. Can you talk about that? Who, where? I've been doing this for 7 years, and I've been doing like groups like this for like a really long time. And it's been thousands of people in group settings. And I've worked with clients one-on-one too, which I don't do these days, though I may again in the future. But if you do like a couple go rounds of this per year for 7 years, it's like many thousands. And then also I used to have, and they were a nightmare, but I used to like truly coach and guide in like many thousands free groups. And so that was like another trial by fire of like the many people that I was coaching, but not even like in an organized program like this. It was like, sign up for my free emails and we'll have like coaching in a group on Facebook. And there were like, 2,500 people in that group that I was coaching for like a half a year. So I've worked with a lot of people. I've gotten a shit ton of feedback. And it was sort of like this forum where we're working together for a chunk of time. It started really long. I had a 6-month program. I learned so much through that. I also learned that a 6-month program is too long in some ways, and it's daunting for people in some ways, but is also really amazing because you can see like so much can happen in 6 months. So that's how I've been working with people, and this is how I continue to work with people. All right. Becca says, that's the one that you're talking about? Wait, hunger-directed eating is the way down diet? Tell me more. That blows my mind. Patsy says, I love the idea of weight as key. I hope most to come out of this book club experience to shift my beliefs about weight. Is focusing on dogma a way to call out places where we've been duped? I don't understand the question, but maybe you can clarify. Oh, you do clarify. Meaning the idea that our relationship with weight, not just being food, is key. I still don't really understand the question. Is focusing on dogma, like when I talk about the culty nature of diets, a way to call out places where we've been duped? The answer is yes, but I don't know that I understand the question that you actually want me to answer. So maybe you can clarify and I will answer. Shell says, I'm with Lauren. I don't know what to eat. I wrote a big, long question about this in the app. I saw that, and we're going to get to that. I'm going to get to answering yours because it was a very detailed, nuanced question, and I'm going to read it, and I'm going to answer it the best that I can after I get through these. Gallery chaos. I'm in bed, guys. Did you know that? But it's really just because I need to be away from my sad dog. Intellectually, I'm all about the theories of the fuck it diet, but I still have emotional attachment to the idea of thinness equals happiness. How can I really make it sink in so I truly believe I'm okay as I am? All of the prompts, all of the discussion, all of the, really honestly, like discussing with people the ways that manifests. Like, what are the ways that belief that thinness equals happiness keeps coming up for you? What are the specific experiences that you have as you go through this that help you understand, first of all, how that's negatively affecting your life, and also how we got there in the first place. So unpacking all of those things, all those beliefs, where did these beliefs come from? Are they family? Is it media? What are the experiences that we've had that have seemed to solidify this belief? And how can we begin to unpack those things? And that's what all of the prompts and tools in the book that that's what's going to be coming up in the next weeks. And you're going to hopefully be experimenting with them. We're going to be discussing them. But this is a thing that's going to continue to be difficult and be something that we need to work through, because we do live in a culture that actively teaches us and reinforces to us that thinness equals happiness. And so it makes sense that it's difficult to unpack, and it makes sense that there's so much there, and that even when we, make progress, that we're inundated with bullshit, and it's difficult. It is difficult. If it wasn't difficult, we wouldn't need to be doing this in the first place. So I promise that all the things we're going to be talking about will help to begin to unpack this. All of the tools that I give are meant to help you sort out what's going on in your mind, to work through how we got here in the first place. and that little by little it will help. But there's a reason why it's not a quick fix, because there's so much to unlearn, and it's hard. It's hard to be counterculture and to go against what everybody keeps talking about. But we will continue to work through it. Becca says, I actually finally figured out one of the reasons I wanted Way Down to work so much was because I could eat anything I wanted. All foods were okay, but only a few bites. And only if your stomach grumbles. I remember that. And again, through a diet lens, you're like, wow, this is great. Like, this is great. And also, like, there's almost this, like, I'm going to, like, that you have, like, help from, like, the other side where you're like, yes, like, I'm going to be guided to, like, be my most healthy, wonderful self. And it's very intoxicating. And I did it. I think I was a junior in college or a senior in college. I mean, high school. I was a junior in high school. Okay, Christy says, wondering if you won't love food anymore. Okay. What does mean? Regarding, responding to? I've never known, but I do use it. Wondering if you won't love food anymore. I realized that things I thought were part of my personality were a reaction to chronic dieting and the result of restriction and obsession. Yes. I considered myself a foodie. I mean, I still love food. And I think the only way to describe how I am is kind of a food snob, but I have, that's what I've realized. Like, all those years of being a foodie, now I do have, like, really, like, snobby tastes because of all that time spent. But you have to fill up on food, and that's the other wonderful thing. Ooh, somebody retracted a message. Ooh, that's dramatic. But yeah, I thought that I wanted to, like, have a food blog, like, and have that be my life, because that was my way of, like, being a French, like, that was my way of, like, being obsessed with food, but also being obsessed with, like, quality or whatever. And it was just basically a diet, and I was able to convince myself that it wasn't. And I also thought that it was, like, my deepest passion, but it's not. Lauren said, do you think meal planning contributes to being addicted to dieting? I think it helps me make healthier choices, especially when you're super hungry and can't make a choice or don't know what I want to eat. So meal planning for money, for financial reasons, for practicality, for just basically being able to feed yourself easily on the go during a busy week or during a work week or whatever, that's great. Like, if it's genuinely the planning of what can I eat that will be nourishing to me, that's great. I mean, that's wonderful. But when it becomes, how can I plan the way to eat perfectly and I can't veer from this plan, that's when it's a diet. Does that make sense? So, like, planning ahead, cooking ahead, having, but you have to think of, like, how can I switch it to, instead of, like, I'm planning out the perfect amount of food that's the perfect amount of calories and the perfect kind of ingredients. So I eat perfectly this week. How can you change it to, how can I give myself more than enough food to nourish myself? Because I don't know how hungry I'm going to be, but I know that I'm going to need to eat. That's when it's, like, wonderful and supportive. But it's very easy to see when it turns into a diet. If you're doing it in order to eat perfectly throughout the week, whatever you believe perfectly means, that's when it becomes a diet. Guys, I actually can't believe this is, like, I love how many questions there are. Sad Molly. All right. Oh, we're at the bottom. Okay. Sorry, I keep losing my place. Oh no, I'm not at the bottom. Okay. Oh, I think the retracted thing was that Pamela couldn't hear, and people are like, I can hear great. I hope you can hear now, Pam. Michelle says, I love the intuitive eating book, but felt like your book was speaking more my language, bringing the goal of intuitive eating into today's society. Yay, thank you. I mean, that was my goal. My goal was to explain this in a way that I needed it explained to myself, because when I read the intuitive eating book, I didn't understand what I understand now. Kathleen says, I agree. I love intuitive eating, but the FUCK diet really clicked for me. The FUCK diet is also very frank about weight gain in the beginning stages. Yes. And I mean, there's a reason why people are super vague. Like, who knows what's going to happen? But without addressing how loaded that is and how much that will get in your way if you're like trying to avoid that, it's not giving you the full picture. And I don't know. I mean, there are definitely people who like unsubscribe from my emails immediately because they're like, I can't do this, you know? But there's also people who are like, thank God you're finally saying what I needed to hear. So can't win them all. Pamela says, damn it, I feel like I just breathed and it moved the thing. Pamela said, last night I had a delicious sandwich. It's been my favorite sandwich lately. I wanted more, but it was too much. I just laid on the couch like a lump afterwards. Also, if I'm sitting, I don't feel as full. Once I stand up, I feel really full. So I think this is you elaborating on your question of, I feel full, do I have to keep going? You don't have to do anything. So it's very normal, and this will become easier and easier and easier and more instinctive as you go through this process, but it's very normal to love the food you're eating, to get full and be like, I love this. Do I want to keep eating it? And what I'm saying is it doesn't need to be a drama. If you keep eating it, that's fine. If you keep eating it and get really full and you're like, why did I do this to myself? That's fine. But when you become really, really guilt-ridden over that, that is what jogs the process. That's what jogs the, oh shit, like I can't believe I did that. I shouldn't eat a lot later. And then you're in that diet repent cycle. Even if it's a small one, you're back in it. If you finish, I don't know what I'm holding. I don't know if it's a piece of cake or if it's a sandwich, like you said. But if you finish, I don't know who holds a sandwich like this, but it's like, if it's a hoagie, which is what we say in Philadelphia, like the bottom of a hoagie where it's like, this is the round part. If you finish, you're already really full, but you really like the taste and you finish it and you're like, now I feel really full. I need to lie down for a little bit, or I don't have the time to lie down, so I need to go live my life a little bit uncomfortable, and you just go throughout the rest of your life, that will allow you to get to a normal relationship with food sooner. And it'll allow you to get to the place where in the future, you're like, oh, this is so delicious, and I'm so full, and I really don't need to finish it because I just don't care. And that is what we want. We want to get to a place where there is no drama and it is more joyful to not feel uncomfortable than it is to eat a couple more bites of delicious food. It won't taste as delicious when you are not in the diet cycle. So right now we're in in the beginning, you're in a phase where you're like, I don't know if I trust that I'm really allowed to eat this, so I need to eat it. Do you know what I mean? And that's fine. But when you really trust that you can eat this sandwich that fits perfectly in your hand like this every day for the rest of your life, if you really truly want, it won't matter to make yourself super full on something that's delicious because you can have it whenever you want. And so right now in the state that you're in, it doesn't matter. Like, I think your question before is, do I keep going? I think you said something like, I'm so full. Do I have to keep going? And it was a funny way of wording it, and I didn't really know what you meant, but you don't have to keep going, or you can. And to allow yourself to keep going, to eat this little end of the sandwich, is what will allow it to not be a drama, and for you to happily, without thinking about it, be like, oh, I didn't finish my sandwich this time. I still really liked it, but I can have it any day that I want. It's not a big drama. Does that make sense? Becca says, the weigh down diet is hunger directed. You wait for the growl. So So are you telling me that when people in their Instagram bio say, like, lover of life and Jesus and into hunger-directed eating, they're talking about the Weigh Down diet, or are they two separate things that are very similar? We can continue talking about this in the group. It's like practically been an hour and I haven't even come close to answering everyone's questions. Kathleen said, also, the Fuck It Diet made me realize it's really okay to emotionally eat. And that as I process my emotions by feeling and breathing, which really works, yay, I'm so happy. We're going to talk about this so much more when we get to that section. I won't need to emotionally overeat as much. And that's the truth. And again, it doesn't need to be a drama. It doesn't need to be you need to breathe and feel so you don't overeat or emotionally eat. And that's just not the way that it has to be. And also doing it that way will put you into the cycle again. Montana said, oh, she looked up what RE means. Is not an abbreviation for anything. What? It really just means RE, which is an English preposition. Oh, I'm not reading it out loud. I'm like processing it for myself, but so it just means in the matter of or in reference to. So it doesn't mean anything. It just means what it means. Thank you. Meal planning. Yes, that makes sense. Love the answer. Actually takes the pressure off. Yay, I'm glad. Pamela can hear now. Hopefully, Pamela, if you missed anything, you can just go back and rewatch it and you'll be able to catch whatever you missed. It's really funny that there is like a drama about the sound that I didn't even know was happening. Oh, I'm sorry that Molly's barking woke up your dog. Okay. Patty says, my question was unclear, but your answers to others answered what I was trying to say. Great. I'm so glad. The podcast episode you did on the Fuck It Diet versus intuitive eating was really great for helping me understand the difference. I'm very glad. Pamela said, I was referring to the part of your book at the beginning where it says to eat a lot no matter how full you are. Does it say that? I think I'd love to know how I worded it. I should know everything I've ever said, but so I think what's really fascinating, and the reason that I left it in the book is because in the Minnesota starvation experiment, when they were refeeding, they couldn't satiate their hunger even if they were super full. Like they felt really full, but they also still felt hungry. And the reason that I kept that in is because that is what a lot of people in the very, very beginning stages of refeeding after being on diets for years or decades feel. They're like, I think I feel really full, but I also weirdly feel hungry. And there's nothing to say about that except it's a weird sensation that other people feel too, and you're allowed to eat. And I think even though that's a weird, confusing feeling, if that's what you're feeling of like, I'm full, but maybe I'm hungry, but maybe I'm full and I just don't know, that instead of you being broken, that's a normal, like confusing hunger, fullness signal that's happening as your body starts to get used to eating food. And as you try to refeed it after a long time of dieting. I'm not sure if that's what you're referring to, Pamela, but that's what that makes me think of. But really, the biggest like piece of advice here that I can give is to trust your hunger and fullness. But if it's hard to listen in the beginning, that's normal and fine and a part of the process. And I think that sometimes is all people need to hear to be like, okay, well, because I can't be sitting there with people being like, how do you feel now? You know, it's such a personal process to be like, I need to try and figure out how much to feed myself. And I don't know. And your body is craving so much food and you're hungry and then you're full and it's hard. But my goal is to take a little bit of the panic out of it and be like, it's going to be okay. Does that help? Michelle said, I have said responding to my post later. Awesome. Okay, that we now know that just means okay. So Michelle, there are two Michelles, but one is Shell and one is Michelle. So as I read I have a lot of shame coming up regarding toxic women friends whom I have since cut ties with, who fat shamed a really good nurse friend of mine incessantly over the years. Is there something we should make amends to or brain dump? And then she thinks that our keyboard is broken because it had to be in two separate things. That's hard. I think brain dumping will be really helpful, because I guess the question becomes like, should you be forgiving those people and talking to them? Or is it better to cut them out of your life? Or am I holding on to, like, is this a traumatic moment in my life? I think the brain dump and breathe and feel through your own experiences with those people and what that did to your body and your own, feelings about weight yourself will be a good first step. Does that make sense? And we'll get to talking more about that in future weeks. Becca says, I think there may be more than one faith-based hunger-directed eating program. However, Way Down is biggest and is still going strong. Okay. I'm so curious. If it's the same thing. Pamela said, I often feel hungry and full at the same time. Well, that sounds like it's the beginning part of this process, and that I promise it won't feel so confusing for the rest of your life, and that you're doing a very good job, because it's hard in the beginning when you're like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. He said, I would rather stop eating when I feel full and eat again when I feel that I want to. That's great. I don't know if you've misinterpreted something that I said in the book to be like, just make yourself feel sick. Like that's not, I would never recommend that someone purposely make themselves feel sick with food. So you never have to keep on eating, but you also never have to stop. Does that make sense? There are no rules. Lauren said, what if you know why you're overeating, trying to fill a void? Because I'm not employed, but I keep doing it. I know that is okay, but I do care about my health and I don't want to cause other health problems. Emotional eating is like a really benign way to soothe yourself. It's like not gonna destroy your health. I mean, anything, I really don't believe that emotionally eating is the worst thing you can do for your health. That being said, we also want other ways to, take care of ourselves and to self-soothe. And that is the point of the emotional section, and the point of the breathe and feel tool, and the point of the brain dump, and the point of the thrive section. It's like, okay, so where can we put our energy that is, life enhancing and joyful? And so we can do those things at the same time. You're allowed to eat. And I know that there's a lot of fear. There's so much fear over eating, which is why it becomes the drama that it does in the first place. But that you don't need to be so afraid about the eating. All you need to do is just find ways to take care of yourself and let yourself eat. Does that make sense? Okay. Becca said, how much does what we eat truthfully impact our health? Well, a lot of the Health at Every Size studies that I recommend people look up is basically, there's something in the book Body Respect, and I did put this in my book, where it talks about how they have seen that basically marginalization and stress and basically like poverty level, like the stress of being marginalized and not having, power in your life, and not having basically like access to the things that you need, are way worse for your health, no matter how you're eating. So like those things actually, and genetics, those things affect your health way more than your actual eating habits. And it's why two people can eat the exact same thing and have totally different bodies, health problems, life expectancy. Like there's no formula to perfect health. Yes, eating in a way that is nourishing to your body, moving in a way that is joyful, sunshine, sleep, human connection, those are all things that are really good for you, but there's no formula, eating more fruits and vegetables is good for you, but it can't erase the other things that affect our health as well. Stephanie said, is it bad at this stage in the FACA diet to try and add new foods in my diet because I see them as healthy, even if I don't exactly crave them or want them, or only doing it because they're healthy? You don't need to do that. You can add things like add healthy things that you want, but until you crave anything specific, you don't need to add anything. You can, if it makes you feel good, to be like, I'm going to eat exactly what I want and I'm going to have a little side salad. Great. I'm going to eat exactly what I want, but I'm going to have an extra piece of fruit in the afternoon too. That's fine. But if it makes you feel stressed, you don't need to do it. You will crave varied foods the more you do this. You said it's not restrictive for eating them in place of other, but are you just shitting on yourself and prolonging healing? Yeah, you are shitting on yourself. And basically, and there's another question, and I'm going to need to start actually answering the questions that were asked ahead of time, or we're never going to get off this call. But there's a funny thing where it's like we get stressed about. Someone asked a question about like, am I ruining this process by eating healthy foods? And it's like, it doesn't really matter what you do. It matters the mindset that you're in. So you need to be able to be honest with yourself of like, is this creating stress? Does this feel like a thing that I need to do? And if I don't do it, the world is going to fall apart? Or is this just a casual, like, let me see what it feels like to like add another vegetable into my life? If you don't feel like you're there yet, if that feels like a stressy thing or an all or nothing thing, like if I can't do this, then I'm not being healthy enough, then it's worth examining and not making yourself do, if that makes sense. Okay, I'm going to begin to answer the questions that were asked ahead of time. If you need to go, it is now 2:00. It's been an hour. You can watch the end of this later. And other than that, you can stay on and listen. And I can answer a couple more live questions, but I'm going to need to go to these ones that were asked ahead of time now. So Daphne asked, and these aren't exactly for this week's, but I'm going to very quickly answer them. And then we're going to talk about it more when we get to these weeks. She said, my question is about borders. And I think she means like rules. If I understood correctly from your book, you advocate removing all limitations on eating and eating what you want, when you want, and as much as you want. But in the end, don't we need some limitations, even loose ones? I'm thinking of the equivalent of money. Most of us need to limit our expenses, no? And so the answer to that question is a bank account, which is not a living, breathing thing, is very, very, very different from our hunger and our appetite and our metabolism and our relationship to food, both physically and emotionally. And so the reason that there cannot be any limits on food, especially in the beginning, is because the emotional and mental pieces of this journey actually affect the physical. So if what we want to do is not feel so addicted to food and not feel so obsessed with food, it's really important to completely surrender to the other direction, because that, ironically, is the thing that allows your body to calm down and actually begin to tell you what it needs, as opposed to us going off of, extreme hunger and extreme restriction and extreme rebellion against those restrictions. Does that make sense? So we can't compare it to money. We can't, because they're not the same thing. And that's also going on the assumption that calories eaten equals body weight, that's not the way that it works. Your metabolism is adjusting itself depending on how much you eat. If you eat less, it actually tries to conserve energy and burn less and hold on to weight, which is not what bank accounts do. So it really does work completely differently. And then this is another thing that I kind of answered already in a different place for her, but she said, you don't think emotional eating should be controlled or diverted. I find that knowing why I'm eating doesn't help avoid it. I know I'm bored, frustrated, or feeling lonely or in love, but understanding this doesn't help at all. So how would the emotional work help us? So again, it's not about logically knowing why, it's about being able to work through those actual emotions. So, which is why I talk about in the emotional section, bringing it from the brain, bringing it from overthinking it and thinking we can think through our problems into actually feeling what those things feel like, because that is why we're emotionally eating. We're emotionally eating to soothe, which is fine, but also to not have to feel those things. And that's why the breathe and feel is all about actually letting ourselves move through those things. So we're not constantly trying to avoid what it feels like to be in our bodies. We will work on that more when we get to those sections. Oh no, sorry. I thought this was already asked. So this is a long thing. Okay, the question is, what do we do when we've already stopped restricting and found a higher weight? I'm embracing as best I could, but what are your thoughts on thriving from here? This might be an annoying answer, but everything that we're working on is like, that's a very broad question. And so it needs to become a little bit more specific in order for me to be able to like really answer it on a call like this, especially when I've already gone overtime. But basically she's saying that she has been doing this for a little while, or she's been trying to heal for a while because she used to be bulimic and now is not anymore. And she's saying that, let me just read it. Why didn't I read it? She said, my hunch is that there are some beliefs I can uncover through this work that will allow me more freedom. And then she says, what do we do when we've already stopped restricting food and found a higher weight? And the answer is the work on those beliefs. So you actually really did answer your own question. And that is what we're going to be doing in the later weeks, very specifically in this group on these calls. So we're going to be working through all of the things that you basically came here to work through. So without getting really way more specific about whatever those specific beliefs are, that's the answer to your question. Okay. Lauren, who I think has been on this call. Oh no, hold on. Let me just take a little drink of water because it's been an hour and 15 minutes. Oh my God, there's algae in my glass. It's really not good. Okay, I'm gonna bring this down and clean it afterwards. Can you see that? I can't see myself because, okay, can you see the algae? That's not good. I promise that that's not what all my glasses look like. Okay. Okay, so Lauren says, I'm very interested in energy work that you talked about. I find that when I feel grounded, I don't binge as often. Will you be going over any of this during the course? I find that I'm chasing a feeling when I eat. I want to numb out and feel my body. Numb out and feel my body, if that makes sense. That actually doesn't make sense to me. So we should talk about that more, because I think of numbing out as being the opposite of feeling your body. So we will talk about that more. I won't stop eating at night until I get this feeling because of anxiety and I'm trying to chase or push it away. So yeah, this is why I talk about grounding and talk about coming back into your body and talk about how important it is to, and how grounding eating is. So if we're living a very ungrounded life, unwilling to feel what it feels like to be in our body, completely overthinking in our minds, and actually sort of like disassociating from our body, which a lot of us do, eating actually is a way to bring you back into your body and tie you to the earth and keep you alive, which is why doing the work to come back into your body with and without food is really important. And feeling emotions is one of the ways to do that, because having unfelt emotions is one of the reasons we don't want to be in our bodies in the first place. So yes, we're going to be talking about this more. Yes, we're going to be doing a little bit of breathe and feel on a live call. I'm going to be giving an audio of it so you can do a guided thing by yourself. We're going to be talking about this a lot in later weeks when it's part of the reading assignment and curriculum. So Zoe said, you talk about body having a set weight point. I understand that, but I want to reach it. But do you know how to find it without weighing? And this is very important. This is a very, very important answer that I think may answer a lot of people's questions, that you don't need to do anything to find your weight set point or your weight set range. And you may also already be in your weight set range. Your body, my whole point is that your body is smart. And I already answered this, so I'm sort of reading it so I can say what I said in the comment. But your body wants to be at your weight, in your weight set range. Your body wants to be where it feels safe. So it's actually about letting go and trusting your body to do what it needs to do to heal and thrive. And often, in order to get to a place where it can relax, it needs to gain weight first. It needs to refeed first. But sometimes it needs to gain weight and stay there. Everybody has a different place where their body needs to be. Everybody's body has a different journey that it needs to go to feel safe and to feel fed. And so there's never I'm just going to read whatever. There's never a legitimate reason to weigh yourself unless your doctor is about to put you under anesthesia and needs to know how much to give you, or another similar thing of like it being a drug or something. The whole point of the weight set range is that you can't control it. And it's mostly genetic, and you're being kept there by your hypothalamus and your metabolism and your hormones. And two different people who eat exactly the same thing can have completely different bodies and completely different genetic weight set ranges. And there's genuinely nothing that you can do to try and change that. All we can try to do is take care of our bodies and nourish ourselves and move joyfully and circulate our blood and enjoy the short time that we have on the earth. So I understand that people immediately may go to, oh no, how can I lower my weight set range? But the thing is, and the most important thing to keep remembering, is that dieting is the thing that long-term raises set ranges. And it is to keep you alive. So instead of being like, isn't it really annoying that your body does that? It's like your body is literally doing it because it's desperate and wants to make sure that you don't starve it to death. I said we would chat more about this on the call, but it's 2:16, and basically that's really all I needed to say. And I'm sure that that's something that will continue to come up in the group, because I think, that's sort of like the old way of thinking of things, and we're trying to change it to look at bodies and weight set range in another way, in a way of like, how can we befriend it and how can we trust our bodies? But that is my answer to that question. So let me see if anybody is writing. Stephanie said, ew, algae. I know, like my Brita gets algae after it's been there for a while, but I just cleaned it a little while ago. So this is like probably like a week old, and I keep filling it with new water, but it has algae at the bottom. But I have to drink, or I'm gonna not be able to go on. I mean, I think it's algae. Okay. Yay for energy work. So Lauren, you are on the call. I thought you were. Okay. Jennifer, Elizabeth said, I have a question about cravings. My cravings are not very strong. Usually when I check in with my body, the responses I hear are subtle, like nothing sweet. Rarely are they a demand for a specific food. Ironically, when my body does want something specific, guacamole, the craving is often gone by the time I go out and buy it. Am I missing something about cravings that I need to tune into more? Or is the idea of cravings more, you should not ignore them when they occur? If cravings don't feel like a dramatic thing for you, then yeah, I think we have different ways of, I think everyone has a slightly different way of defining cravings. I rarely crave something super specific either. And I think that that's a good thing, because it actually gives you more options. And I think that that's something I'm curious. I think you've been doing this for a while, I'm guessing. Like, I think that the further people are on the journey, the calmer cravings are. Like that's maybe the goal. Though it could be really fun to create something really specific and then eat it. And it's like a very happy experience. And occasionally I get really specific cravings. For the most part, it's, I really need something, like, yeah, I want salty, I want sweet, I'm really hungry, I'm not that hungry, I crave some, I crave some fruit, or I crave some produce. But for the most part, it's more general, which is good, like good. So I wouldn't, I feel like this is another example of someone being worried that the the less dramatic it is, that something is wrong. But you don't need to overthink it. If craving, I think that the reason that I talk about cravings so much is that people are so afraid of their cravings, and cravings tend to be really strong in the beginning of this process, and that people are allowed and encouraged to give into them. But your softer cravings are sort of just your intuition and your body speaking up, and so you can listen or not, or just, I think that that's like a good place to be. So I'm curious what you think about that too. Jennifer says, my question in the first part of the book, while I'm in the recovery stage and trying to prove to myself that I can eat whatever, whenever, is how do you know you're not, this is the question I was talking about. You're not restricting if you're trying to make healthy choices while still eating, honoring cravings, choosing what sounds good on the menu. If I'm making I'm putting this in quotes, healthier dinner and happy with that, I'm thinking, I'm okay as long as I'm doing things like ordering pizza if I feel like that instead, or having a snack later. I'm paranoid about doing it right and not delaying my recovery from mini famines. And this is the example of when I say you are overthinking it. You don't need to worry about that. All you need to do is get honest with yourself when it does become a sort of diet, or does become a thing where you feel guilty if you're not having healthier dinners. And someone else said, this is your question too, I'll make myself a healthier meal now. If I can have treats later. Now that is a little bit restrictive. That's somewhat restrictive thinking, where it's like, you're sort of like bargaining. You're sort of like treating it like a bank account. And the only way to move away from that kind of thinking is just to be really honest with yourself when you do it, and to kind of call out all of that's a restrictive thought. Like, I'm only allowed to eat dessert later if I have a super healthy dinner. And having again, I need to put healthy in quotes, because healthy is different depending on what you need and who you are and and what you believe is healthy. But having a later dinner, or a healthier dinner, or a like no grains dinner, or whatever you think is healthy. I don't even know, it just depends. And then having more food later, or having a huge dessert, is totally neutral if it's not this like calculated thing. If it's not this like, this is the only way that this is acceptable thing. If it's more of a like, oh, okay, like this is what I planned, and this is that, and then being like, I'm still hungry, whatever. Like, it's all about the way that you're relating to it, if that makes sense. Does that make sense? I think the first part of the question, the first person asking the question seems like they're overthinking it. That they're worried that having anything that falls into like the healthy category is like not doing the fucking diet right. And that's not true. You can eat whatever you want. You can eat anything across the spectrum of what people think is healthy and what people think is unhealthy. But the second follow-up to the question from someone else does sound like it's bargaining. And the question of how do I move away from this is just being honest with yourself, and pointing it out when you do that, and then working through the beliefs that are behind that, and working through the fear that's behind that, and allowing yourself to not do that, and then see how that feels. And the last question, well, let me check the group actually. The last, free probiotics. Oh, LJ, is it? That's cool. I thought it was like free greens, free like superfoods or something. Okay, the last question is, I've actually already answered this question because it's about additives. And so I'm not going to answer it again, but she's saying, you speak about big diet. What are your thoughts on big food, meaning food manufacturers spending millions perfecting the right combination of fat, sugar, chemical, texture, and mouthfeel to trick our brains into wanting more, and yet not filling up on these hyper-palatable foods that are typically low in nutrition scale, unless, of course, your diet is lacking in fat and sugar. Does the fact that we have so much more access to these foods today than, say, 50 years ago have anything to do with diet culture as we know it now? I think that because I've already answered the question and tried to debunk these foods will make you eat them until you explode. I think that the only way that it has fed into diet culture as we know it now is that we do demonize them so much. And again, I don't think that they're like, I'm not saying like that these foods are like the most amazing things and will like, there's no like salvation in Cheetos, but there's also no salvation in no Cheetos. I don't know why I'm saying salvation. I'm inspired by the Way Down diet right now, but I think that the only thing, the worst thing that it actually does is that we're able to have these extremes of demonizing different things and demonizing these foods and feeling so guilty over eating them and so afraid of these foods and wanting to eat the whole bag or whatever, and then feeling horrible about that and it proving to us that we have absolutely no control. And if we can just stay away from those, it will be okay. But then we still feel drama around food. And I think it adds to the drama, but I don't think the worst part about it is the fact that they're hyper palatable. I don't think they're like amazing nutritional things, but I think that there could be way less drama around it if we didn't have the diet culture that we have. Does that make sense? But we already talked about how they're really not as addictive as we fear that they are, even though they've been crafted to be hyper palatable. That's it, guys. An hour and a half. So I talked about how that it was front loaded in the beginning, but actually the next 2 weeks are really the ones with a lot of writing exercises. It's the longest reading assignments. And it's all about actually eating the food and all of the stuff that comes up when we start to do that. So this week was kind of light, which is good because we were able to introduce ourselves. And I added a couple bonus prompts to allow us to begin to discuss some of the essays and lessons in the very beginning of the book. But these next weeks, they're going to be a lot of writing assignments that I hope that you do on your own, and you don't have to do all of them. You can do the ones that you have time for or the ones that stand out to you. And I'm going to be prompting us to discuss them. So even if you haven't done the writing assignment, but I prompt and you have an idea, like you can totally join in on the conversation at any point. And I think it's going to be really great. I mean, this is our chance to like have the accountability to actually discuss these things and hopefully actually do the writing prompts and just talk about what it brings up. And I'm looking forward to more. Does anybody have any last question or thought before we sign off of this call? While I drink some algae, unintentional algae. Aww, Shell says, thank you. Happy Saturday, all. Happy Saturday, guys. I will talk to you in the group very soon, and we will be doing calls like this every week. And Claudia says, thanks, Caroline. Thank you guys for being live. Thank you for asking questions ahead of time. Thank you for watching the replay if you're watching the replay right now. And here we go. Thank you, guys. You're all saying thank you. Thank you for being on the call, and I will talk to you soon. And go have a really delicious lunch, or if you're bored of food, still have a delicious lunch. Wait a minute. One more thing. Somebody asked a question. I swear that somebody asked a question that is now gone. And I think it was Michelle, one of the two Michelles. So I'm confused. It's not there anymore, but I think I read it earlier, and I think people have signed off now. But we can just talk about it in the group. I already answered sort of the question about that. But I feel like she deleted it because I don't see it now. I'm so confused. I'm confused. Oh yeah, it is here. Wait, there is one more question. Okay, if you guys are gone, that's fine. But I'm going to answer this question because I don't know why it didn't show up when I was just looking at the comments now. I'm going to quickly answer this. I'm just trying to decide if this is going to take like 20 minutes. Okay, Michelle. So Michelle's essentially saying, I'm in a place where I'm really bored with food. And we sort of talked about it on this call already, that it is a phase. But what I think I would like to do is I would like to I want to answer the question in the group just since we've gone over by a half an hour. And we'll take this into the group if that's okay. And we can definitely talk about this more on the next call if it's something that you feel would be helpful for you. But we did talk about it. I talked about how that's like that's a phase for people. And, but I think that I would be able to actually give you a little bit more to sink your teeth into if I take the time to write up a response to you. So that's what I'm going to do. And I will do that later today. And I hope that that's okay. It's so weird that I didn't see it before though. Okay. And then there's one more question, but she actually asked it live on the call. So we'll talk about that more later. I'm going to sign off. My dog is very sad. And okay, great. She says she's good to discuss it in the group. Okay, that sounds great. Happy Saturday, and I will talk to you soon.